Hey everyone, it's Chirpy, your favorite rogue, here again with another commentary VOD review. This time, we'll be watching a plus 23 Fortified Halls of Valor that my group timed. This is a dungeon that's notorious for being a pug stomper due to the unforgiving cast that can one-shot a party member on a higher key level, and frontals with weird hitboxes on every mob pack leading to the second boss, which can be very hard on the group's melee members if they're not careful. I'll be explaining how and why we did the pulls the way we did so that way you too can become a rank 1 Mythic Plus player. Without further delay, let's get on to the video. Right from the first pull, it's already very dangerous. We triple pack these mobs to save as much time as possible. Our plan is to sap the first Thundercaller and focus the second Thundercaller down while we're rotating kicks on it. So we're going to shroud past these first guys to make it easy for our tank. I sap that first Thundercaller, I set orange to my focus cast, and we start mowing orange down. We're rotating kicks. Our druid and I both kicked the same one, but it's okay. We have 3 other kicks ready. And now we're focusing the dragon down. I set my focus kick to moon, but we're focusing the dragon down because that is the most dangerous thing for our tank in this pull. The Thundercaller's cast can all be stopped between our 5 interrupts. Once we kill the dragon, we move our focus onto the Thundercaller, and we avoid all the Spitefuls, and we're on to boss. On this boss, there are 3 main mechanics. One is the Dancing Blade, which is that fire circle that you can see in the section right here in the middle of the map. That does a lot of damage if you stand in it. It is baited onto the furthest range from the group. In most cases, everyone else should be stacking in melee except for the person that is baiting, to ensure that the person who is baiting always gets it towards them. The other main mechanic that you need to watch out for are these thunder breaths that put these thunder tornadoes as well, which need to be dodged. I eat one right there, I just couldn't get it. And then the other mechanic is the Horn of Valor, which is just a lot of raid damage overall. You can reduce this damage by using Feint, and you want to manage these thunder breaths by going to wherever he breathes first, because that becomes a safe spot for the remaining 2 breaths. We get through this boss without a problem, and we move on to the next pack. We always go for the right side pack here. I use a distract on the sentinel to make sure that it doesn't pull. I sit on Star Mystic. The main thing that you need to do is kick the Holy Radiance. The Rune of Healing isn't that big of a deal because you can just kite the mobs out of it. We have our Feral sitting on the other Mystic, which casts the same thing, the Holy Radiance, which he is in charge of stopping. And then we have everyone else stopping all of the Thundercaller casts. Or sorry, not the Thundercaller, stopping all of the Rune Carver casts here, which are the Etches. The Etches will do a lot of damage, and it's a channeled cast. It needs to be stopped. If one of those casts go all the way through, chances are somebody is dead. Another thing that you need to watch out for in this pack are the frontals. These mobs have a really wide frontal range that is super unforgiving. To avoid them, we want to try to stay completely behind the target as much as possible. So just watch your tank's positioning and try to plan accordingly. In this next pack, we have 2 Mystics, which do the heals. We need to kick the Holy Radiances. I'm sitting on Star to make sure none of those go off. Our Feral is sitting on the other Mystic to make sure none of the Holy Radiances from that mob goes off. And everybody else is sitting on the Thundercaller, rotating kicks to make sure that none of those go off as well. We do have a mishap there. Right there, our Feral did get hit by the frontal, even though he was nowhere near the frontal. But, again, we knew that these things have really wonky hitboxes, just very unlucky. We finish off the pull, and we move towards the next pack. We have a really good patrol here. That's what I'm doing, turning my camera right to make sure that we have space to pull this next pack. And we are assigning kicks on the Thundercaller, which we are putting 3 people on, and the Rune Carver, which only takes 2 kicks. I take aggro there because I did not tricks, but then I drop the aggro, I get the tricks, and we move on. We continue pulling, and we just finish this pack. I use Boon here. This is a pretty safe pack to use Boon on as long as your tank doesn't turn the mobs into you during the middle of the frontals. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, Check me out on Twitch at ChirpyTV, link in the description below. Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate the support. Right there, you can see I took another frontal hit, and I was pretty behind the target, but again, luckily it didn't one-shot me, and we continue going. On this Purifier, we need to make sure that we get all the Cleansing Flames casts. We always have a ranged kick do the first one, and then we are able to rotate kicks on the rest. Right there, I ripped aggro. It happens. I didn't have tricks back off cooldown yet, but then we get a battle res and we continue the pull. This pull has nothing but frontals and one kick. So you need to make sure that you stay behind the pack as much as possible, especially when they're hitting the tank. When they're running, they don't really cast the frontal, so it's okay to move in front to stay on your main target. And then after we kill the caster, we focus our damage onto the Valkyrie aspirant here. And we try to kill that while also making sure that we dodge the Blessing of Light, which is a frontal always aimed at the tank. Right here you can see behind we had our healer bug out the aspirant's swirly AoE dive. You can do that by, when he's targeting a ranged character, you can line of sight the ability on the staircase, and it will just constantly respam the ability. So that way it never gets cast and you continue cleaving on it. This is a trickier pull to double pull. We did it a little bit late, but we made it work. What you want to do to make this work perfectly is, when he starts the first damage tick of Eye of the Storm, that's when you pull in the other mob. We're using a melee kick on the first cast that he does, because after these balls go out, he does another cast, and we use a ranged kick to make sure that even if he's casting out in the middle of nowhere during the Eye of the Storm, we have a ranged kick to make sure that nothing goes off and we all stay alive. We continue finishing the pull, we dodge the balls, and we move on. This boss fight is pretty scripted. She will always do the same cast sequence, and you need to plan defensives accordingly. For rogues, we are very lucky and very fortunate that we can use Feint and Crimson Vial on every one of these storms if needed. I don't use my Vial immediately here because I know that our healer keeps us up, and I just use Feint to mitigate the damage to make it easier for our healer to keep us alive. After each spell that she does, we rotate side to side because she gets a stacking buff on her that makes the spells do more and more damage. If she keeps that beam that you can see coming out from her right now, that yellow beam, she gets a beam from each of those sides depending on which side she's on, which makes the other ability do more damage. So during this one, our healer calls for us to use our major defensive, so I use Feint for the first 4 seconds, and then I use my cloak for the last portion of it to make sure that I don't die and that I can live through the entire thing. Another thing you can do as a rogue, every single one of those yellow circles, you could use Feint on. The only time that I would not use Feint on it is when we're transferring sides here, and then we know that we're getting an Eye of the Storm. So right there you saw I got the yellow circle, I didn't use Feint, but I know I need it for this Eye of the Storm because this is a lot more damage that's harder to heal through. After killing the boss, we move on to our next pulls, and we continue going. Right here, we opt to pull this into line of sight just to make it easier to make sure that we don't accidentally pull a sentinel. I'm sitting on the Thundercaller here, and we are watching out for frontals again from the Shield Maiden. We have our Feral sitting on the Mystic to make sure no heals go off, and we're rotating kicks on the Thundercaller, making sure that nobody gets one shot. Right there you can see I use Distract to make sure that the Sentinel stays as far back as possible while we get this pull into position. In this pull we have one Runecarver, one Mystic, we pull the other patrolling Runecarver in, and the Marksman. The Marksman is super annoying in this pack, and there's a way to work with it. You can line a sight right behind these trees and the Marksman will come in. Unfortunately, he was really giving us trouble here. He didn't want to come in, he didn't want to cooperate. So we just finish off the Runecarver, and we follow this Marksman because the patrol is walking away, the Sentinel in the background you can see. So now we're just focusing all of our damage on the Marksman. The thing that you need to watch out with this Marksman is he does an ability called Penetrating Shot, which will go through your whole group and deal a massive amount of damage if you're not looking where it's going. We go through the portal here, and we are pulling the dragon with a stag. In order to get the percent on the stag, you need to make sure that you hit him before the dragon eats him. When the stag gets close to the dragon, they will eat the stag and gain a damage and HP buff. It's not that big of a deal, we still kill the dragon in very good time, and we make sure that we are clean with this before we move on to Fenrir. By hugging this wall, you can make sure that you don't pull any of the bulls or the 4-pack there, which is very dangerous. On this boss in particular, during this phase, you never want to use your Vanish unless you get that leap. Right there you can see I jump out because he targets the farthest member that has the leap debuff on them that he's going to leap to, and if you use Vanish, it stops him from jumping to other members, getting the bleed, and it helps your healer keep everybody else alive. The bleed is very, very dangerous on Tyrannical or Fortified. So it is very important that as a rogue, you take this responsibility to make sure that you cancel the cast by using Vanish. A little trick that I use to help make it easier is I watch his cast bar, and as soon as the cast bar is filled up for the leap, I press Vanish, and I'm safe. We're on our way to the phase 2 of Fenrir. I sap this wolf so everyone else in the team can walk by, and we start off the pull. We actually got very, very unlucky during this, and I didn't get chosen for the leap for the first 2 leaps. So we almost wiped the key here, which would have been super unfortunate due to how well we were doing on time. But we made it work. You'll see we had to clean it up. It was kind of messy, but we made it work. If you get chosen for the fix-it here as a rogue, you can just use evasion and sit there the whole time so your team doesn't have to chase down Fenrir. Right there, we lost our Feral. We have to get a B-res up on him real quick because that AoE that Fenrir does, it splits the damage between however many people are inside the circle. So if you only have 4 people inside the circle, those 4 people are going to be taking a lot more damage than anyone outside of the circle. So it was very important that we got that res up as soon as possible. Right there again, you saw that I leapt out because I was chosen for the leap bleed ability again. So I was finally able to grapple hook out, vanish, cancel the cast, stop our team from taking massive amounts of damage. A little trick you can do to help your group out here, every time that he summons wolves, make sure you press Tricks of the Trade. That will help your tank get aggro, so that way nobody else who's spamming AoE buttons gets killed by the wolves, because they will hit very hard on this level. This next pull is a little bit tricky, but we gather all of the bears up and we gather all of the yaks up at the same time. We go around this tree to make sure that we don't pull the 4-pack that's sitting behind, and we gather everything up all together. And once everything's gathered, I press Boon, and then I use evasion to make sure that I don't get stunned by the bull and I don't take damage. It does get pulled out a little bit of my boon there, but I still got a decent amount of damage from it. So now we're just kiting this pack in circles. We're trying to get soothes on the bulls because they do an ability called Piercing Horns, which will really hurt your tank, and the whole thing here is we just need our tank to live. He is kiting the entire time, not trying to do massive amounts of damage or anything. He is just trying to live to make sure that we get through this pull. If you have AoE stops in your group, such as Leg Sweep, Shadow Fury, Vortex with Typhoon, anything like that, you want to be using it on the bulls here whenever they're doing their AoE swirly circle, and that will make sure that your melee is able to maintain higher uptime on the packs to increase their DPS. On our way out here, we grab 2 of the meads from the tables. I distract the patrol and we shroud through the doors and we go up the stairs. We use the meads to multi-pull or chain pull the mini-bosses here in order to save time, because doing one at a time is very inefficient, and on a high level key, you just don't have the time to do one at a time. So we throw 1 mead at Haldor, 1 mead at Bjorn, and we talk to Ranulf at the exact same time. We pull Ranulf over to Haldor, and that makes Haldor start hitting Ranulf, and then that eventually he becomes hittable, but first he runs away, and we have our ranged position in a way that when he's running away, the range can talk to him to trigger the dialogue that lets us stay in combat. So we're focusing the lowest HP one here initially to make sure that our tank can clear their bleed stacks off them as soon as possible and can stay alive. Right now we have the 2. We're going to chain over to the 3rd one. We're going to talk to that one as well, get it in combat. Again, we're finishing off the lowest one here just to try to save our tank's life, because this is a very tank-intensive pull. We need to make sure that we kick all of the yells that these casts do, because that will do massive damage to your party. It's not a good time at this level. If one of those go off, you can probably see a wipe. It is recoverable, but it's very, very hard to do so. They also do a ability where they summon another mob into this room, and you can use your blind on one to CC it for a minute out of the pack so it's not running into them. If these mobs absorb one of the ancestors that are called in, they get a massive heal, and it really, really slows down your kill time. If you haven't hit the sub button yet, go ahead and do that. It's free and it will make my day. If you haven't checked out the Twitch, link in the description below. Go ahead and follow that and hit the notifications so that way you know whenever I go live and you can watch these keys get done live. After we kill all of those mini bosses, we have a 30-second RP before we can start the next boss. When this boss starts, I hold on to my Vanish because he does an ability that you can actually cancel, which makes your healer open to do damage as well. So I hold my Vanish even though it sacrifices my haste buff that I would get, and I do get chosen by the Fellblade Rush there, very luckily, and I'm able to Vanish the cast, and our Evoker is able to go up to 30k DPS because I vanished it, so he didn't have to heal me through it. Then, during this phase, I use my boon. It's very important to make sure you have Cloak here, because if you don't have Cloak and those ads spawn on top of you, they leave puddles on you, which can do mass amounts of damage and potentially kill you if you're not ready for it. So I held my Cloak as long as possible there, until the very end where it would have killed me, because if I cloaked too early and the cloak ran out and I was still stuck on top of the green due to boon, I probably would have died anyways, so I held on to it to make sure that it would last through the rest of my boon. I'm also holding on to my Slicing Maelstrom trinket for this ad phase. I could have used it earlier, but it's important to kill all these ads down so that way you save as much floor space as possible, make it easier for your group. We continue just playing the boss, doing the mechanics, and we get really unlucky Ragnarok timing here. There's a bug on this fight where if you kill the boss during his Ragnarok cast, he explodes, and everyone takes the full damage as if there was no shield available. So we hold our damage here just to make sure that the shield doesn't explode and we all stay alive. Our timer is looking a little bit tight, but it's okay because this last boss actually only takes 2 to 2.5 minutes to do. You'll see during this last boss, I have a weak aura that puts a mini-map of all these runes on the floor and shows me exactly where I need to go in order to clear my debuff and get the Angel Wing buff. So we pull this boss to the edge of the fight here, or the edge of the room, to make sure that we drop spears off of the center, and we make sure that the ad is going to spawn out of the circle, so that way we all know that we're running towards the middle of the room in order to kill the ad, get out of the circle, and maintain damage. There's the weak aura I was talking about. It told me I had to go yellow, top right, so I was able to go immediately. I didn't have to look at the floor, I didn't have to look at the patterns. If you want that weak aura, make sure you check out the Discord link. I put all my weak auras on the Discord in the Discord channel, so it's a huge help to have. It makes this fight a lot easier. The other mechanic that you have to watch out for is that ad spawn. You can't let the Surge Cast go off. If the Surge Cast goes off, it could be a wipe for your group. It does a lot of damage. Right there I get unlucky, I get eaten orb, but luckily my rune was right next to me. Another thing you could do as a rogue is if you're taking a lot of damage from the rune, you can use your cloak to mitigate the entire debuff. And then you could still go get your rune and get your buff. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to check me out live on Twitch, link in the description. Like, subscribe, share, tell all your friends, and I'll see you guys next time.